Stress is unavoidable, most of us know this, yet when it creeps up on us in excessive amounts, we tend to give in and experience major discomfort to the point that it takes a heavy toll, psychologically, emotionally, and even physically. What can we know and understand about stress that will influence our response to it when it shows up? Well, to discuss, I'm joined by Dr. John Demartini, who not so long ago hosted a public talk in Sandton called From Stressing to Blessings. Dr. Demartini, how can we define stress to understand this panicked rush of energy that often paralyzes us at times?
Well, I define stress as the inability to adapt to a changing environment. We have constant change going on in our life. Relationship issues, health issues, business, finance, social issues. Every area of our life is constantly, you might say, having volatilities and movements and changes. So the inability to adapt to that change and having resilience to that change is what we're defining as stress. And there's two types of stress. There's eustress, which is actually healthful. That actually helps us in our health. And distress, which is the one that is causing the cardiovascular diseases and all the problems that we hear about. So the key is making sure that we fill our lives with eustress, not distress.
I find when I experience excessive amounts of stress, I book myself at the spa for a day. But it's not sustainable. We have to find ways to deal with our stress because different stresses come up. Can you suggest ways that we can deal with stress?
Yes. It's really never what happens to us, it's our perception, our decision and our action to it. William James said that the greatest discovery of our generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their perceptions and attitudes of mind. So if all of a sudden, let me give you an example. Let's say I was to take your thumb and hit it with a hammer. You go, ouch. You'd probably think, well, that's pretty stressful.
Scream louder than that.
But what if I gave you $1 billion and said, I'll give you $1 billion cash if I slammed your thumb?
Say,
now you stick the thumb out there and say, slam away. Because your perception now is I'm going to have more reward than risk, more benefit than drawback from that slam. So now it'd be a different type of feeling. It might hurt, but you would see it as an opportunity. So in the area, each individual lives by a set of priorities, a set of values in their life. And whenever they're setting goals that are aligned with the highest value, they have the highest degree of resilience. Because in the things that are highest in their value, they'll embrace pain and pleasure in the pursuit of what that is, which is their purpose. But whenever they set goals that are lower on their values, because it's less fulfilling, they'll look for immediate gratification and try to avoid challenge. So we have the greatest resilience when we're setting goals that are aligned with our highest values, and we have the greatest ability to see things as opportunities, challenges as opportunities. And so we're able to have more adaptable and more resilience in our mind when we're setting goals that are meaningful to us. But if not, because we're searching for immediate gratification and wanting a one-sided world of pleasure and ease and simple, the other things become now distress. So when you set goals that are challenging, that inspire you, you have eustress, and that helps your health and well-being. But when you're not setting that and you're looking for an easy life and you attract challenges, you have distress. And distress is when you have the frustrations of feeling challenged and you get the fight or flight mechanism and you affect your cardiovascular disease and digestive diseases and many other things.
Sure, I get what you're saying. And if we have to take it back to what you said about perception, in other words, we actually choose to feel stressed.
It's perception. I had a woman the other day that had a husband that had a fling, and she was ready to kill him. She was wanting to murder him. Not really, but she was livid. She wanted to choke him. And I asked her, so what's the benefit of that? And she said, there's no benefit to that. I said, no, what's the benefit of that? And she stopped and realized that it was a feedback mechanism to let her know that she had given so much attention to her career, her nephew, and her brother who was dying of melanoma, that she kind of put her husband on the back burner. And as a result of it, he was giving feedback. Now, the person he had the fling with was not a long-term relationship. It was a kind of a one-nighter. Yeah. So that was just a reminder. So he unconsciously didn't really want to leave his wife. He actually was out there doing something to fill up some value of his. But she saw it by the time we got through, she saw it from a different perspective and actually realized that she had to communicate in his values more and give a little bit of attention to him. And the moment she did, she was actually grateful that it happened. So it's never what happens to us. It's actually how we perceive it and what we attach to it. And so resiliency is the ability to see things in a way where it's on the way, not in the way, where it's instructive, not obstructive. So we become masters of our destiny, not victims of our history.
That's an excellent example, because what you're saying really is when it comes down to perception, and when we actually look at the situation and get into responsibility, then we can get away from stress and start taking responsibility for why we found ourselves in that position in the first place.
Well, we're accountable for our perceptions. The human being has the power to influence and change their perceptions and their actions. That's what we have control over. And so that can make a big difference. I'll use the example. I had a gentleman who came home, and his wife really started giving him a hard time, and because he was late. And he didn't say anything as she was kind of bitching at him. And I always say bitching, or bitch, means beautifully inspired teacher of conscious humanity.
Okay, one way of putting it.
Yeah. So what happened was she was bitching at him, giving him some hard time. And when he came home and he didn't say anything, and after she got through, he said, "Do you mind if I now say something?" And she said, "No." Because she was really upset, because she had an expectation for him to be home, and she made this nice meal, and he said he was going to be home, and by God, he should be home. But what happened was somebody got in a car accident on the freeway.
Wow.
And he pulled over to try to help, and he tried to get that person to the hospital.
Wow, what a lesson for her.
So when she got through, she started crying, and she gave him a hug. And she said, "I can't believe that I didn't even give that a thought, didn't give even the question of what might have actually happened." Now, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes people are just not there, and they're late because they're just not putting that as priority. But anytime you expect another human being to live in your values and not their own, you're going to end up being stressed.
Sure.
But people don't betray you. You betray you by projecting unrealistic expectations on them.
And also jumping to conclusions.
Jumping to conclusions. So again, her perception changed all of a sudden when he said the story. So all of a sudden she goes, "I'm not stressed. I'm now grateful for him for doing that and saving a person's life possibly." So it's wise to stop and reflect before you impulsively react, and think about all the possible ways that could be interpreted, and then ask yourself, am I choosing the possible perception that's giving me my greatest outcome? Or am I choosing a perception that's just making me angry?
Sure.
And if I'm being angry, is it because of my own misperception and my unrealistic expectations? Am I comparing my current reality to a fantasy that I'm addicted to and expecting other people to live in my values or me to live in other people's values? Or am I going to learn the art of communicating what I want done in life in terms of other people's values, which reduces the stress levels? Because everybody wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are, not who we're supposed to be relative to their expectations.
And perceptions are very difficult to break, especially once you have a very rigid frame of reference.
Well, the more fundamental we are in our perceptions, the more black and white we are, and the less gray we are, the higher the stress levels we're going to experience. Because we're going to want to avoid pain and seek pleasure. There's an animal nature in us that is seeking prey and trying to avoid predator, seeking that which we want to consume, to eat, and trying to avoid the thing that could eat us. And whenever we see things white or black, or all good or all bad or all nice or all mean, or very black and white thinking, we have the highest stress levels and distress levels.
Sure.
But the second we're more able to see more of a relativity and not an absolute, but more of a gray, and see things that everything has two sides, the more resilient we are and the less stressed we are. So I teach people in the programs I do, the Breakthrough Experience and other programs I do, how to be resilient, how to be adaptable to changing environments, how to set realistic expectations, how to expect others to live in their values and us to live in our values and not the other way around, and how to appreciate life and see things by asking new quality questions. Because the quality of our life is based on the quality of the questions we ask. And if we ask questions, how's whatever's happening to me right now, how does it help me fulfill what's most meaningful to me, my purpose in life? How does it help me get what I want in life? If you ask that question and don't stop answering until you answer that, you'll say thank you in life. And when you do, the stress levels go down and your health and well-being goes up.
I suppose it's also important to be in control of our emotions, because when we react emotionally, we tend to blow things out of proportion, and that creates stress as well.
Exactly. Well, when we have a balanced orientation, we don't have emotions, we have thank you, I love you. Yeah. I've asked people, millions of people, if they had only 24 hours to live, what would they do with their life? They say that they would go to the people in their life that contributed to life the most and say, thank you, I love you. So really, that's what's the essence of our existence. That's the highest priority of our being. So we never know when our last 24 hours is, so it's wiser to do that. If we want to have less stress, it's wise to look at life in such a way that we can say, thank you, I love you. To ourselves, to the people around us, to what we did to do in life. And anytime we're not doing that, we're having emotions. And emotions age us. The polarities of our emotions are constantly throwing us into a kind of a turmoil.
And we actually carry those emotions with us because something that could have happened a week ago or the day before yesterday still affects us, and we react emotionally, unintentionally to a new situation, and that creates more stress.
Well, anytime we have a lopsided or imbalanced perception, it's stored in the brain in the form of brain noise that's occupying space and time in our mind and running us. If we're infatuated with somebody, they occupy space and time in our mind and run us and fill our brain with noise. If we're resentful to somebody, they do the same. But when we love somebody, we're freed. The noise is down, we have mindfulness, and we have, in a sense, resiliency, adaptability, and fitness. So if we want to get the most out of life, it's time to stop, reflect, ask a new set of questions, and make sure that we see things from a balanced perspective. If we're infatuated with somebody, it might be wise to ask what's the downside before we get lost in that infatuation. If we're resentful to things, it might be wise to ask what's the upside. And once we can bring that into balance, we're poised, we're present, we're powerful, we're patient, we're purposeful, and we're productive.
It's actually quite scary to think about if stress is left unchecked, how it could actually destroy your sense of well-being.
Exactly, that's what it is, distress. But see, we have to have challenges in our life to grow. Maximum growth and development occurs at the border of support and challenge. The thing is if we fill our days with challenges that inspire us, it doesn't fill up with challenges that don't. And the challenges that inspire us birth eustress and resiliency, because we're going after something we're looking forward to solving, a world issue that we want to solve. But if we're sitting there not doing that and we're looking for an easy life, we attract challenges that inspire us. And those are the ones that create the disease and stress. So because we're looking for a one-sided world in a two-sided world.
Can stress be a cause of depression?
Well, depression, I define depression as a comparison of your current reality that's balanced, even though you may not see it, comparing it to a fantasy that you're addicted to that you want, that's not reality. So anytime you're holding on to a fantasy about how life's supposed to be, instead of honoring the way it is, you're going to be depressed. And depression is a wake-up call, a feedback mechanism to let you know to readjust your expectations and make sure they're real. And don't expect others to live in your values. Don't expect you to live in other people's values. Don't expect a one-sided world. Don't expect mechanical objects to read your mind. Be real about your expectations. And the stress levels go down, and the depression doesn't have to come there as a feedback to guide you.
Is it important to communicate your levels of stress to people to receive support? But of course, sometimes support is not always available.
Well, sometimes the meaningful pathway is not going and getting support who then have empathy for you, because then you'll stay stuck in your thing. Because if people give you too much attention while you're stressed, you'll use stress to get the attention. And you can do it. It's like I remember there was a little boy that came running down the street because he had a boo-boo. He cut himself. And he came all the way down the street. He wasn't crying. The second he gets to the house and the door opens and his mom's there, he starts crying. And then she goes, oh, here, boo-boo, and then gives him ice cream and takes him to the movies and do all those things. So the child then grows up thinking, okay, Pavlov dog, salivate. If I go and bruise myself and injure myself and get in trouble and get hurt and everything else, I get what I want in life.
Okay.
So sometimes the empathy and the sympathy that people give can actually backfire. So you want to make sure that you're giving people truly valuable feedback that is both supportive and challenging to make sure that they learn their lesson so they don't have to go and create the stresses just to get the attention.